My friends, there comes a moment in every life when you must make a decision. Are you going to live as the weaker version of yourself or rise into the stronger one you were always meant to be? Because let me tell you, the weak version of you isn't your enemy. It's your history. The strong version is your destiny. Today, I want to talk about what it takes to crush that weaker version. The one built by fear, by doubt, by old wounds. And by the stories you didn't write, but learn to believe. And as we walk through these truths, remember you don't need permission to evolve. You don't need approval to level up. You need courage and a plan. Here are the 5 key notes that will change everything. Before you can crush the weak version of yourself, you must first be brave enough to recognize that this version exists within you. Every human being, no matter how strong, disciplined, or successful they appear on the outside, carries within them 2 cells: the strong self, the self that rises, fights, and strives, and the weak self, the self that hides, fears, delays, excuses, and settles. The weak self is not a villain, but it is a powerful force. And if left unchallenged, it quietly becomes the dominant version of you, shaping your life without your permission. The weak self is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It negotiates. It persuades you to take the easier path. It convinces you that tomorrow is better, that now is not the right time, that you're tired, that you've already done enough, that you deserve a break, even when that break is just an escape from growth. You know this version of yourself because you've met it many times. You've met it when you planned to wake up early but stayed in bed anyway. You've met it when you promised yourself you'd start that project, yet somehow spend another day scrolling, drifting, avoiding. You've met it when you silenced your potential because stepping into your power felt intimidating. Recognizing your weak self isn't about self-judgment, it's about self-awareness. You cannot transform what you refuse to acknowledge. The weak self thrives in denial. It grows in darkness. It strengthens every time you pretend it isn't there. But the moment you shine a light on it, honestly, courageously, unapologetically, it loses its power. Awareness is the first victory in the battle for your life. Your weak self is built from old stories of fear, stories of insecurity, stories of failure that you've repeated to yourself until they became your identity. It is the part of you that clings to comfort because that comfort feels safe. But comfort, when abused, becomes a trap. It is the cage disguised as a warm blanket. And too many people live their entire lives inside that cage. Not because they lack ability, but because they lack confrontation. You must confront the weak self. You must be willing to look at your reflection, not just the surface reflection that shows your face, but the deeper one that reveals your habits, your patterns, your reactions, your limitations. Ask yourself the hard questions. Where am I shrinking myself? Where am I avoiding responsibility? Where am I letting excuses lead my life? Where am I choosing comfort over growth? Where am I sabotaging my own potential? These questions are not meant to shame you. They are meant to awaken you. The strong self inside you is waiting. It is watching. It wants to lead. It wants to build. It wants to rise. But it cannot take over until you acknowledge the presence of the weaker counterpart. Only then can you start to separate the two, to identify which thoughts come from fear and which come from purpose. The strong self says, let's go. The weak self, maybe later. The strong self says, you are capable. The weak self says, what if you fail? The strong self says, you deserve more. The weak self says, this is good enough. Your life changes the moment you start listening to the strong voice, even when it is quiet, even when it feels unfamiliar, even when fear tries to drown it out. Recognizing the weak self is the beginning. Challenging it is the journey. Replacing it is the transformation. Crushing it is the victory. And that victory begins right now, because awareness is the first step to reclaiming your power. There comes a point in every person's life when they must look in the mirror and tell themselves the truth. Not the softened truth, not truth dipped in sugar and wrapped in comfort, but the real truth, the kind that shakes you awake. Because the weak version of yourself, it survives through excuses. It grows every time you let yourself off the hook. And it thrives every time you choose comfort over responsibility. If you are truly going to crush the weaker version of who you used to be, you must stop negotiating with your excuses. Excuses are the stories you create to justify staying where you are. They are the soft pillow you sink into when life gets uncomfortable. But soft pillows don't build strong people. Strong people are forged in discipline, honesty, and commitment. Strong people get up even when they don't feel like it. Strong people decide who they're going to be, and they refuse to bend for their feelings. One of the greatest traps we fall into is believing that our excuses are valid because they sound true. I'm tired. I'm stressed. I'm overwhelmed. I'll do it tomorrow. These statements feel real, but they are dangerous because they allow you to stay in a cycle of emotional negotiation. You start convincing yourself that your mood should control your progress. But progress never comes from mood. Progress comes from mastery. The weak version of yourself argues for limitations. It explains why you can't, why you shouldn't, why you won't. It tells you to wait for the perfect moment. It tells you that you don't know enough, aren't ready enough, or don't have enough. But the strong version of yourself, it doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for motivation. It doesn't wait for clarity. It moves. Because movement itself creates clarity. Every time you choose discipline over excuses, even in the smallest moments, you crush a piece of the weaker self. When you get up, instead of hitting snooze, you crush it. When you work instead of scrolling, you crush it. When you say no to unhealthy habits and yes to your growth, you crush it. You don't transform in big dramatic moments. You transform in the tiny, quiet decisions that no one sees. And here's the truth: your excuses are not harmless. They steal your potential. They rob your future. They keep you repeating the same year over and over again and calling it your life. To rise into a stronger version of yourself, you must start practicing radical honesty. Ask yourself, Tan, where am I playing small because it's comfortable? What stories have I been telling myself that keep me stuck? Tan, who am I blaming instead of taking responsibility? Tan, what am I avoiding because it feels too hard? And then answer with honesty, because growth is impossible without truth. Radical honesty doesn't mean judging yourself. It means facing yourself. It means acknowledging your patterns, your distractions, your fears, your procrastination. It means saying, this is where I am, and I am choosing to do better. When you stop negotiating with your excuses, something powerful happens. You reclaim your power. You begin to operate from choice instead of emotion. You begin to lead your life instead of reacting to it. You begin to separate your identity from your old habits. You no longer see yourself as the person who struggles with discipline. You become the person who shows up no matter what. And that is how you crush the weak version of yourself. Not with intensity, but with commitment. Not with perfection, but with consistency. Not by waiting for the right moment, but by deciding that now is the right moment, because the strongest version of you is already inside you. All you have to do is stop letting excuses speak louder than your purpose. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must face a painful truth. You cannot become a stronger version of yourself while still holding on to the habits that belong to your weaker self. Growth demands sacrifice. Transformation demands disruption. You cannot rise while clinging to the very patterns that keep you grounded, stuck, and silent. If you want to crush the weaker version of yourself, you must be brutally honest about what you do daily, repeatedly, unconsciously, and courageously choose to break the patterns that limit your potential. Every pattern, no matter how small, that creates momentum, the question is, what direction is it taking you in? The weak version of you is built on patterns like avoidance, procrastination, self-doubt, overthinking, fear-based decisions, scrolling to escape emotions, and saying, "I'll start tomorrow." These are not personality traits. They're trained behaviors. They weren't born with you. You learned them. And if you learned them, you can unlearn them. But breaking a pattern is not just about stopping a bad behavior. It's about interrupting the automatic loop that keeps you stuck. The weak version of you lives inside these loops. It thrives on repetition. It thrives on the comfort of what you already know, even if that comfort is misery. So the first step to breaking these patterns is awareness. You must be able to look at your life with unfiltered clarity and ask yourself, what am I doing every single day that is keeping me from becoming who I want to be? And then you must answer honestly. No sugarcoating. No blaming circumstances. No pointing fingers. You cannot fight a pattern you refuse to acknowledge. Once you identify the pattern, the second step is interruption. This is where most people fail, because interruption requires discomfort. It requires doing something new, different, and unfamiliar. The weak version of you will resist, because breaking habits is breaking its home. But strength is built through resistance. Not resistance as in avoidance, but resistance as in weight. When you lift weights, your muscles grow by facing resistance. When you break limiting patterns, your identity strengthens by facing resistance. So how do you interrupt patterns? By replacing them with intentional, powerful actions. If you usually procrastinate, the new action is start for 5 minutes. If you normally react emotionally, the new action is pause and breathe. If you escape discomfort through scrolling, the new action is put the phone down for 1 hour. If you doubt yourself, the new action is do it anyway. These small but deliberate shifts weaken the of your old identity and empower the rise of your stronger self. But remember, patterns are not broken once. They are broken repeatedly. Consistency is the battlefield where the weak version of you and the strong version of you meet every single day. The weak version hopes you choose comfort. The strong version hopes you choose growth. And your daily decisions determine which one wins. Breaking patterns doesn't happen in one big moment of motivation. It happens through hundreds of micro decisions. Some inconvenient, some exhausting, some requiring courage you don't even know you have yet. But each time you choose discipline over excuses, action over hesitation, responsibility over blame, you are cracking the shell of the weaker you and stepping closer to the person you were meant to become. Your life changes the moment you stop negotiating with your limitations. Your identity changes when your actions change. Your future changes when your patterns change. The weak version of you will always fight for survival. It will whisper that you're tired, that you're not ready, that tomorrow is a safer choice. But you must answer with action, not excuses, because the strongest version of you, the one you dream about, cannot be built inside the routines that belong to your weakest self. Break the patterns and you break the limits. Break the limits and you become unstoppable. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide who is truly in control of the version of themselves that dreams boldly, or the version that quietly whispers excuses. Excuses are not harmless. Excuses are the silent chains that keep you tied to the weakest version of yourself. They wrap around your potential, your confidence, your opportunities, and even your destiny. And the truth that many people don't want to face is your excuses are costing you the life you say you want. If you want to crush the weak version of yourself, you must become deeply intolerant of your own excuses. Not other people's excuses. Your excuses. Because the weak version of you survives on phrases like, I'm too tired. I'll start tomorrow. I don't feel ready. It's too hard. Or, I'm not as good as others. These may sound small, but they are powerful. They are the cracks in your discipline that eventually become the holes through which your potential leaks out. The strong version of you does not negotiate with excuses. It doesn't wait for energy, motivation, or perfect conditions. It acts. It acts because action builds strength, and strength builds identity. When you act consistently, even in discomfort, you begin to see yourself differently. And when you see yourself differently, you live differently. Understand this clearly. Excuses are the language of limitation. Action is the language of transformation. Every time you choose one, you feed one identity while starving the other. The weak you grows when you justify your stagnation. The strong you grows when you say, I don't feel like it, but I'm doing it anyway. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to stop giving emotional explanations for logical responsibilities. You don't need to feel like doing what needs to be done. Your future doesn't care about your mood. Your goals don't care about your mood. The strong version of you doesn't care about your mood. Mood is temporary. Discipline is permanent. Mood changes every hour. Identity is built through patterns, not feelings. Think about the most disciplined people you admire in sports, business, leadership, life. Do you think they always feel motivated? No. They train themselves to choose action over emotion. They built habits that operate even on their worst days. They built lifestyles that reject excuses. And that is why they became exceptional. You don't need to be superhuman to do this. You just need to start small and start consistently. Replace one excuse a day with one action. If you say, I'm too tired to exercise, get up and move for 5 minutes anyway. If you say, I don't have time, find 10 minutes. Because the truth is, if it matters enough, you will make time. When you say, I don't know where to start, take the smallest step. Beginners are not expected to know everything. They are only expected to start. Each time you choose action, you train your mind. You teach your brain that you are no longer the person who hides behind excuses. You are becoming someone who shows up for themselves. You are becoming someone who honors their commitments. You are becoming someone who doesn't fold at the first sign of discomfort. Momentum is built one decision at a time. Confidence is built one action at a time. Power is built one discipline at a time. And the weak version of you loses strength every time you choose differently. Your excuses may feel familiar, but familiarity is not your friend. Growth is uncomfortable, but discomfort is your path to greatness. The strong version of you is already inside you, but it cannot emerge until you stop protecting your excuses and start protecting your future. When you replace excuses with action, you reclaim control, you reclaim focus, you reclaim momentum. And once you do, there is no limit to what you can build, who you can become, or how far you can go. It's not about being perfect. It's about being committed. It's about choosing the version of yourself that wants to rise, not the one that wants to rest. Crush your excuses, and you will crush the weak version of yourself. There comes a point in every person's life where they understand that strength is not built from wishes, motivation, or occasional bursts of discipline. Strength is built from identity. Who you believe you are dictates what you tolerate, what you chase, and what you walk away from. The weak version of you does not simply disappear because you want it gone. It fades when you build a new identity so strong, so aligned, and so true to your values that the old version no longer has a place to survive. Too many people try to improve their lives while keeping the same identity that created their struggles. They say, I want to be confident, but they maintain the identity of a person who doubts every decision. They say, I want to be disciplined, but they keep believing they are someone who always quits. They say, I want to be successful, but they hold on to the identity of someone who feels undeserving. You cannot create a powerful life from a powerless identity. Your identity is the foundation, and if that foundation is weak, everything built on top of it will eventually collapse. Building a strong identity starts with clarity. Who do you truly want to become? Not who the world expects you to be. Not who society tells you to be. Not who your past mistakes suggest you are. Who do you choose to become moving forward? A strong identity begins the moment you decide. You decide that you are no longer the person who plays small just to make others comfortable. You are no longer the person who hides their potential because of fear. You are no longer the person who apologizes for dreaming big. Your identity becomes aligned with your future, not your past. The truth identity is not built through thoughts alone, it is built through action. Every time you follow through on a promise you make to yourself, you strengthen the identity of a disciplined person. Every time you face discomfort instead of running away, you strengthen the identity of a courageous person. Every time you speak kindly to yourself instead of feeding your insecurities, you strengthen the identity of someone who values their worth. Identity is formed by consistency. Your habits write the story of who you are becoming. But here is something many people misunderstand. Building a strong identity does not mean you will never feel fear, doubt, or weakness again. It means you no longer allow those feelings to dictate your actions. A strong identity says, I can feel fear and still move forward. A strong identity says, I can feel tired and still show up. A strong identity says, I can fail and still rise. You are not eliminating emotions, you are mastering them. Your environment also shapes your identity. Surrounding yourself with people who reflect your weaknesses will keep you weak. Surrounding yourself with people who reflect your strength will force you to grow. If everyone around you accepts mediocrity, you will too. If everyone around you pushes for greatness, you will either rise or leave. The strong version of you needs a strong environment, mentally, emotionally, and socially. Most importantly, identity must be protected. When you decide to become a stronger version of yourself, the weak version will resist. It will beg you to fall back into old habits. It will whisper excuses. It will remind you of your fears, your failures, your past missteps. But identity is strengthened by rejection of the old self. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you crush the weak version of you just a little more. A strong identity does not happen overnight. It is built through repetition, through belief, through relentless commitment to becoming the person you know you can be. And once that identity is built, truly built, it becomes unshakable. That is when you walk differently, speak differently, show up differently. That is when people begin to respect you not for what you have, but for who you are. Because the moment your identity changes, your entire life changes with it. Crushing the weak version of yourself is not a one-day event. It is a lifelong commitment, a daily decision, a moment battle between who you are now and who you are capable of becoming. The weak version of you will always whisper, sometimes softly, sometimes loudly. It will tempt you toward comfort, toward excuses, toward the familiar. But the stronger version of you is waiting for the moment you finally say, enough. This journey is not about perfection, it is about direction. It is about waking up each morning willing to challenge the limitations you once believed were permanent. It is about refusing to negotiate with self-doubt. It is about refusing to surrender your potential to fear. Becoming stronger is the result of countless small choices. Choices most people never see, never applaud, never acknowledge. But you know, you feel it. And those choices are the bricks you lay on the path that leads to the highest, most resilient, most powerful version of yourself. Remember, the weak you survives through old habits, old stories, and old emotional patterns. But the strong you thrives through discipline, courage, and the willingness to start again every time life knocks you down. You do not destroy the weak you by force. You destroy it with consistency, by showing up when it's hard, by believing in yourself when no one else does, by daring to aim higher even when the world tells you to shrink. You weren't born to remain at the level you're currently at. You weren't born to live half awake, half confident, half alive. You were born with a strength that is deeper, older, and more powerful than the fear inside you. And the moment you choose growth over comfort, discipline over distraction, purpose over impulse, that is the moment you crush the weaker version of yourself and step fully into your greatness. So, walk forward with power. Walk forward with clarity. Walk forward knowing that you are the only one who gets to decide who you become. The weaker you had its time, now it's turn. Now it's your turn. Your rise. Crush the weak version of yourself and watch the world transform as you unleash the strongest, boldest, most unstoppable you.